Don't know what's inside of me. Don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. Even when I doubt you.
Hey, thank you guys for tuning in to Blueberry TV. I'm your host, Jared Johnson. I'm with the senior pastor of St. Stephen AME Church here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite, and I'm honored to be here.
So today I'm here with him to kind of get kind of get a history of this beautiful church that is owned by blacks, and it was built by slaves in the 1800s. 1865. Man, it's crazy. So I wanted to talk to the pastor today and kind of get a history of it and kind of find out some stuff that is kind of forgotten in today's history, or like not as talked about, and kind of get this church's name more out there and kind of bring in a bigger congregation for them, you know. How has the community welcomed your church over the years?
I would say, in a mighty way, I've been here for almost 3 years now. I was assigned to this church in September of 2017. So this coming September in 20 would be my third full year here as full-time pastor. But this church has played a major role in the life of Wilmington and New Hanover County for now 155 years. This year we are celebrating the 155th anniversary of the church, and we're celebrating the anniversary throughout the entire year. So we've decided not to just make it a one Sunday event, but it is a year-long event. Every month we're highlighting a different aspect of ministry that is relevant to us here at St. Stephen, but also I feel that will be relevant to the larger community. In many of the months we're doing things that probably have not been done before or for some time. Something as simple as what we just completed last month, which I think you was here for February. In the month of February, we decided to add a different spin to the Black History piece, not to overlook our Martin Luther King's, our President Obama's, our Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and the Vernon Jordans. We definitely highlighted all of those, the Rosa Parks, them our Vesey, to say thanks for what they did during their time here on earth. But we also wanted to recognize those men and women within not just our congregation, but in the city of Wilmington, New Hanover County, and maybe now living in other parts, but while here in Hanover County, they played a major role. Many of them were either the first persons of color to occupy certain positions, whether it was city manager or assistant city manager or assistant county manager. One gentleman this past Sunday was the first black fireman hired. We had a few Sundays ago a young lady who was the first female fireman of color hired here in the city of Wilmington. So it was people like that. We had the first African-American elected sheriff, and who was consistently re-elected. That was Joe McQueen until he retired. So we decided to recognize those persons, and throughout the month of February, I would dare say we recognized at least 30, 40 different persons who played a major role in the development of the African-American community here in Wilmington. And it was our desire to do that, and our honor to do it, because so often those persons, whom I call unsung heroes and sheroes, that no one thinks about. And we just take for liberty, whether it's being out on the Wilmington, the Capefield golf course, or New Hanover County golf course, and because we can go out there and play golf now, we just take it for granted. But we fail to realize that there was a gentleman there who helped open that door, paved the way, open that trail for us to now be able to go and play golf there. So that's just some of the things we're doing this month, and it has really gone over well. And for some of the persons, as they've said to us on numerous occasions, this was their first time being recognized enlarged by their own community of us and a black church in the community. And for some, their home churches had not done that before. And so I just thought it was imperative that we, recognize those others who have gone on before us, but many of these people are still living. Now, there were some that we did recognize who have already passed. So we had their family members here to receive the award in their honor, in their memory. But the majority of them, these persons we recognize, are still here. And the majority were able to come to service, and some are confined to home because of sickness, because they're well up in age, but by and large, the majority was able to come. So that is what we're doing the month of March. We are recognizing, we are calling it our Ecumenical Worship Month, where we're inviting different ministers from various faith background and faith leaders to worship with us. The highlight of that month is going to be the third Sunday in March, where we are recognizing first responders, whether it be fire rescue, sheriff department, EMT, Coast Guard. We'll have all of them here on the third Sunday to say thanks to them, and especially for the role they played during the recovery efforts of Hurricane Florence, which is still new to us. If you drive around Wilmington now, there are still more blue tops than need to be. There's still kids and residents who are living in hotels, in government homes, or FEMA trailers and things, because everybody has not yet completely recovered from the storm. And so we're going to recognize them during the month of March. And there are other things going on throughout the remainder of the year.
Although 1865 is the year in which St. Stephen African Methodist Episcopal Church was formally established, its roots extended back to the close of the 18th century. It was then that the Wesleyan missionary named William Meredith settled in Wilmington, North Carolina, and began preaching to a group of slaves who had previously captured the divine spark of Methodism from earlier missionaries. As Meredith fanned the spark of faith into a flame, white citizens became suspicious of him, which led to his arrest and jailing. This did not, however, dash water on the establishment of Methodism in Wilmington. He was ultimately released and continued his mission work. For blacks, he helped their faith to grow, and even beyond his death. The early Methodist Church in Wilmington grew rapidly, with black membership increasing by leaps and bounds. The harsh politics and social backdrop of the antebellum South, which included laws against free blacks from preaching, the Free Negro Code in North Carolina, and the drastic response to rumors of slave insurrections following the Nat Turner insurrection in Harper's Ferry, Virginia, did not deter their pursuit of religious freedom. What are some of the challenges that the church faces today as far as, let's say, funds or attendance or really anything else that comes to your mind? What are some of the challenges that y'all may face?
Well, I think our congregation, like many mainstream denomination Protestant churches throughout the U.S., is a proven fact. There's a ton of surveys, studies been done where the typical church attendance throughout the U.S. is drastically down from what it used to be. And I'm one of those, and I think there are many reasons for that. I constantly hear people say, well, we don't have the young people in the church today that we had 30 years ago or 50 years ago. Well, there are many reasons for that, but And I always remind individuals that 30 and 50 years ago, on Sunday, the church was the one place in the black community, especially in the black community, but in other communities as well, but definitely in our community, it was the social hub. It was the gathering place. So if you wanted to see people, you got up, you came to church on Sunday morning. 30 years, 50 years ago, the church did not have to compete with the tennis court, the golf club, the mall, restaurants being open. You had very few restaurants open on a Sunday 20, 30, definitely 50 years ago. So that's why on those 30, 20 years ago, the family dinner on Sunday was a big deal. After church, the routine was you went to the parents, and definitely the grandparents' house, and you had Sunday fellowship dinner. That is no longer the case. Every restaurant in the world is almost open on Sunday. So, it's kind of hard and to me also unfair to do a comparison of today to 30 or 50 years ago. One of the problems, in my opinion, is the church did not adapt to the changing of the times. And while society was changing, times were changing, the church did not sit around the table and figure out how to stay competitive, stay relevant to the changing of the time. Even the way parents raise kids, back in the day, it wasn't an option if you went to church on Sunday morning. That was a given. And you still had social ills and issues that plagued the community 30, 50 years ago, just like we do now. It was not as highlighted then because, one, we did not have this here, we did not have social media. So if things was going on, you really didn't know it. You knew about it by word of mouth, and it really stayed within that inner circle. So you wasn't in California hearing about something that happened in Wilmington, North Carolina last night in a matter of the snap of a finger. It just didn't happen. And so we, as a church, and particularly as a black church, did not do a good job at staying relevant by and large. Some churches did. This is not to say all churches didn't. Many did. But I would dare say the vast majority did not. And as times changed in the community, we did not kind of massage or reshape or redefine our focus or even ministry. Because back in the day, the black church itself, as this church here that we sit in, St. Stephen, it was the hub of the black community. In the very basement of this church is an Olympic-sized swimming pool. On the 4th floor, which is now being converted into a youth wing, it was a gymnasium. And somebody asked the question, well, why that? Well, you go back 100 years ago, here in Wilmington, North Carolina, as in many places in the South, the black kids could not go to the white recreation centers or the white swimming pools. That wasn't allowed. That only shifted, back in the 60s. And we're going back 100 years. So this particular church here at St. Stephen AME Church was the hub of the black community. It was a black doctor here. You had a room for a library. Almost anything that you needed, you could come to this one location. But as times changed with segregation and integration and all, I hate to say it, but to some extent, we have abandoned that which we once owned. And we went to other places, and everyone had a right to do so, but by and large, that also had a negative effect on our community. Even as businesses, as black businesses or entrepreneurship within the black businesses, there was a great exodus from supporting our businesses to going to supporting other businesses. And not to say that you can't, but when you do so in such great numbers, it does have a negative domino effect on your community.
today's society is based around more electronics, and you do see in modern churches that they are more, um, I guess, mobile. So like when pretty much everybody's service is put on the TV or on the computer some way. So that way the people that are stuck at home and aren't as mobile can view their services still, and that still kind of brings them. It keeps the church in their family, and they're able to keep it relevant, like we just talked about. Would this church ever look into kind of updating itself and modernizing itself into the media world?
Sure, I think as time move forward, because that's going to be a necessity for us in the future. Because I think one of the challenges with older historic congregations is not only the maintaining of property, the building per se. You can imagine the challenges of maintaining a building of this size and this age, and so it's almost like there may be 100 things that are needed, and then you have to somewhat prioritize these things one over another. Not to say that one is any more important than others, but then by the flip side of the coin, some may be a little more pressing than others. But that's the goal, is to get to that point, to reach out, to find a way to make the church relevant to today, whether it be through social media. But by the same token, I guess maybe this is my old school coming out, is to not to allow. I think one of the tragedies in our community as a whole, and I pray this doesn't come across in a negative way, is that I think we have become so mobile that we no longer sit and talk to each other. People would say, well, I don't have time to pick up a phone and call anyone. I just send them a text or email. But the same amount of time, when you think about it, that you're sitting with the phone texting a 20-minute, a 10-minute conversation, you can hit one button, dial a number, and not even pick up the phone and leave it on speak and hold the same conversation. I think there's something to be said for when we become so busy with life that we're so busy that we no longer communicate with each other. You know, one of the things that really troubles me when I see, I had a cousin who did this one time. He was hanging out with me, and we're sitting at the table eating dinner, and I didn't say anything. I wanted to see how long this was going to go on. I mean, he said it with a cell phone texting, and I'm like, no. So finally I made him, he was at the time maybe 12, 13 years old. I said, no, this is dinner time, family time. And I feel that we need to be modern in what we do in families, church, community, but there are some values that I think are slipping away from us as a people. To me, I feel we are allowing too much of what happens in society to dictate to us, you know, how we even raise families, how we do worship. You know, I'm reminded of scripture, is that, you know, that we should never forsake ourselves of assembling together, because there is something to be said of being able to come together and to worship with each other under the same roof in the same building. And by the same token, when you have persons who are not able to do that, by all means, we need to make sure we provide for them as well. And now with people having, you know, flexible work schedule where, you know, they may not be able to come to service for a whole month, and they still want to be a part of the worship experience. So I think that is needed as well. But I don't personally think that any one thing or one way or one method will ever fit everybody, because I'm a firm believer that it's going to take some of all of it being put together to produce the greatest product. I just believe that. I just don't think, and I'm just like when people say, well, we need a younger church, we need more young. That's true. But do we need an all old congregation or a young congregation? Because I'm a firm believer, should we be blessed to get to the other side in heaven, I do believe we all are going to be there. I don't think there's going to be one section for heaven. Young folk, male, female, all of that. And I think we all are going to be together. For those who believe in the scripture, yes, we all going to be there together. And so I think this here becomes just a practice dressing up room. And so I kind of pride myself on being able to preach one sermon and have 4 or 5 generations of people in the same family to hear it, and everyone on their own level of maturity, to be able to walk away and feel like they did receive something. It doesn't mean that 4 or 5 of those persons in that group, that one may not receive more or understand more. But if it's a 10, 12, 13-year-old, they should be able to receive something. And if it's their grandmother or great-grandmother who's 80 or 90 years old, I could preach the same old, over-preached sermon about Daniel in the lion den. The 90-year-old grandmother riding back home in the family car is going to relate to it from a different perspective than the son who may be 60, the grandson or granddaughter who may be 30 or something, and the great-grandchild who may be 13 or 14. You have 4 or 5 different generations riding back home on the minivan. They heard the same Daniel in the lion den. But how do you, and I think that's the challenge, not just for me, but for every preacher, how do you make that one story relevant that all 5 of those generations are able to feel like the minister was speaking to them and they received something out of the message? That's, to me, if you're able to do that, yeah, you're pretty decent. Because that becomes the challenge, because it's not just for grandmama, those of the faith believe, the word of God doesn't change from generation to generation. It's the same, but the challenge is, how do you make it relevant to those persons to really see themselves in that story? Because the 13 to 16-year-old lion den, for him or her, is not going to be the same for grandmama or the parent who may be 30 or 40 or 50 or something. It's going to be something. And the lion den just represents whatever your challenge is at that given moment in life. Nobody's going to go to this state zoo and lock themselves up in the cage of lions and wait for the Lord to come and rescue. Nah, you're going to be dead. You're going to be somebody. You're going to be a lion's daughter. But, there are other things that goes on in your life that can have that same type of challenging effect on you. And from bullying to like medical insurance to unemployment to a neighborhood in ruins, there could be a litany of things that you can relate to. Say, wow, this is just like being in the lion den, because this is a challenge that I can't master on my own. I don't know if that halfway answered the question.
No, you're good. It did. I feel like, so pretty much out of all you said is kind of you take the sermon how you relate to it, pretty much. Like whatever words come out of your mouth is kind of how you see it working in your life. So if I got something going on in my life and that relates to the lion's den, as a younger person, I could say, okay, well, I'm in school and classes are coming at me pretty strong, and I could see that me being in the lion's den,
Right.
And kind of God coming to take me out and help me in this through this situation. And as an older person, it'd be, well, I got bills to pay and I need God to come get me out. So yeah, I feel like those who watch this, they'll be able to tell and pretty much see where you're coming from, because they'll be able to relate to their own lives, and they'll, from the church they go to, they'll be able to see kind of what their preacher is talking about and how they go through that same challenge as, you know, to relate to that. All right, you guys, we are now at the end of the video. I really want to thank the senior pastor here at St. Stephen's AME Church for allowing me to interview him and give us a very detailed and a lot of insight on this church. Thank you, Pastor.
Thanks for the opportunity. And if you're ever in the Wilmington area, vacationing, visiting family and friends, hanging out at one of our beaches, by all means, come and worship with us. We're here at 10 a.m. every Sunday. Service normally lasts for an hour, 20 minutes. Normally by 11:30 we'll finish. So we're not here until midnight. So if you come early, and you can be back home before noontime. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And I am a testament. I could tell you it does last, hour 20. It's not bad. So come on by. If you really like this, I will have their website to the church linked in my bio after the video. All right. Thank you, guys.